All right, guys, Rob here again, and I'm here today with Brad Jenson, aka the Sober Bodybuilder. You are the owner of Key Nutrition, the host of the Key Nutrition podcast, and the founder of the Next Level Experience. And my favorite actually is your character you play called Sheena. It's I go through like your Instagram, I saw that one, and I had to remember that. I love that one. Um, but yeah, welcome to the show. For the my listeners that aren't aware of kind of who you are, where you're from, you mind kind of giving a little introduction as to kind of who you are and what you do?
Yeah, man. Absolutely. Thanks for having me on the show. Appreciate it. Yeah. So you pretty much summed it up. The Sheena character, it's funny. People have been like, "Where's Sheena?" Like they're concerned about her, like it's somebody, because I haven't seen any videos lately. So
Yeah.
they're like, "Is she okay?" I'm like, this is a fictional. It's me, right? But yeah, I got a couple more. I gotta have the right ideas for her. I end up winging it with a wig on, and it's weird. But yeah, I live in Salt Lake City, Utah, and yeah, I have a company called Key Nutrition, and so we do all things nutrition and fitness coaching. And I got a team of eight amazing coaches, trying to count underneath the brand, and yeah, man. New dad. My kid is gonna be 17 months, so that's a trip. And
Nice.
my sobriety date is November 20th of 2012, and that's only important in this conversation because I think we'll probably get into more of that. So
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I've kind of heard your story a little bit here and there throughout like listening to your podcasts, and obviously your Instagram is a sober bodybuilder. So yeah, myself, my clean date is March or May 15th, 2018. So not quite as much time as you, but it's not really a race at this point. um excuse me. I feel like everybody and their mother has this sinus infection thing going on right
yeah,
now.
I'm done with it. Yep.
Yeah, like, but everybody's afraid to like go out and actually cough or talk or anything because of COVID. It is a really fucked up part of our time right now.
It
Not,
is.
it's yeah, it doesn't make sense to me, but I mean,
Yeah, no, it's crazy.
it's
We can't just skip. That's the problem. We can't just skip these germs that are passed naturally, and so we're seeing this huge uptick. Yeah, I just got done with it. It sucked, and people were like, "Oh my god, you should stay home." I'm like, nobody was saying that a year and a half ago. Like, if you're just a little sick, people were just like, "Oh, he's sick."
yeah, yeah, no, like a year and a half ago, I was actually at work coughing so bad that I went up to my boss and I was like, "Hey, do you think I should leave?" Because at the time I was working with the public. And he was like, I mean, it's up to you. It's your money, And like a month later, COVID hit. And it just seems like now all of a sudden people care. But yeah, I don't, but nobody wants to talk about actually getting healthy or like eating real food for once or, doing anything to prevent getting sick. It's,
That there's something. I don't care what side of the fence you sit on. It is. It should be very alarming to anyone that our public health officials are not talking about what we can do to stay healthy.
yeah,
Like even just like, hey, you should supplement some vitamin D, maybe. Just very simple things, but nonetheless, like let's close down gyms, so people get more obese. It's a little bit skewy, and so making sure that you're being proactive about your own health is the most important thing to do because they're certainly not going to tell us how to do that, right?
yeah, no, it was like violently frustrating to drive by my gym and see that it was completely closed down, but yet I could go to a McDonald's drive-through. Like it did not make sense to me. So many things just did not make sense to me. So it's pointless to even like get frustrated and talk about it at this point. But yeah, anyway, I do know one thing that's kind of helped with not getting as sick as I used to is kind of getting clean. So I used to be addicted to drugs and alcohol pretty extensively. And that's kind of where I ran into you at. Your sober date was also, November 20th in 2012. So that's obviously something we got in common. With getting sober for me came the nutrition and, bodybuilding and everything that kind of came back. I was pretty deep into it for a while until the addiction really took a dive into the deep end. So if you wouldn't mind kind of telling your story a little bit, my guests have heard mine quite a few times. But just kind of tell us, like what your life was like before, you were in obvious addiction from, your Instagram tag.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, how far you want me to go back here?
Just high school, I guess, Yeah.
I mean, I'll say this much. I always joke that I came out of the womb restless, irritable, and discontent. I think if I could have asked for a Xanax right out the womb, I would have. I just didn't know how to do that. And that feeling continued with me. It was you know, I believe that battling drugs and alcohol and addiction was going to be one of my battles here on earth, and from a young age I just felt that way, and was overweight and teased. Looking back, I was just a chubby 12-year-old, but I felt like because I hung out with kids who had rib cages, I thought they were abs, but they were just stick thin. Yeah, that I felt really, really insecure. And it was a really shitty place to be. I think that 12, 13-year-old age is just so tough for anyone
Oh
when that's
yeah.
a age. And, I found, I took my first drink at 13, and remembered I hated the way it tasted, but I really liked the way it made me feel.
What was it?
Um,
Do you remember?
Jack Daniels whiskey. Yep. I
Ooh.
remember the taste of it was just awful. And then about 20 minutes later, I was like, this shit's pretty cool. Okay. You got to taste the bad to get to the good. This is
Yeah.
amazing. Um, and that continued here and there. I mean, I was 13, 14. It's not like you had a plethora of availability, but we'd get into the neighbor, my friend's, mom's, liquor cabinet. Flash forward a couple of years, I found health and fitness, and I was sick of kind of being that chubby kid that had to wear the black t-shirt to go to the pool because I was so insecure.
Hmm.
And I found it, and I didn't know what I was doing, but I picked up these magazines. I started applying what they were saying to do. And by the time I turned 16, and I had a car, I got a gym membership. And that's the only reason I wanted to get a job, is so I could pay for this gym membership. And then, of course, like protein powder, because that was going to make me jacked, right? And I actually got I look back at pictures. I got to be a pretty jacked little high school kid. I mean, it was what I was about. I quit playing football and everything because football, the two-a-days would ruin all my gains. Like I was super into it. Carrying around tuna fish cans through my high school hallway, man. It was I was in it to win it. And but the lurking fitness was great. And it definitely veered me off of the path I was going down. And in the sense that I had learned somewhere along the way that drinking was really bad for building muscle. So I just essentially just quit it cold turkey. I was just so into the gym that I didn't want to risk losing any of my gains. And so I quit drinking altogether. But I still felt, if anyone's out there as an addict, it just, it's hard to describe. Even though I had like gained some popularity, I definitely wasn't getting teased anymore. I was dating the hottest girl in school. I was probably the most jacked kid in our high school. I felt super insecure at my core, and I felt just like there was this gaping hole inside of me still. Now, fitness helped fill some of that, but it was about my junior years that someone handed me a pain pill, and I'll never forget. Like, this is how naive I was and how quickly it turned. Was I looked at the kid and I said, "Oh, I'm not in any pain," because he said I got these pain pills. I was like, "Oh, I'm not in any pain." And he was like, "Nah, bro." He's like, "They'll make you feel fucked up like you drank, but you'll have no hangover tomorrow." Like they don't do it. Like all the bodybuilders take them. They have to. It's gonna help you, not hurt
Yeah.
you. It's like, dude, I'm down. I took them, and I'll never forget. I'll never forget where I was. I was in this shitty house party. I remember the kitchen, these awful brown cabinets. There was all these red cups everywhere. I remember when that feeling hit me. I remember I just thought, this is the feeling I want the rest of my life. Like I wanted to chase that shit. I had arrived, I was complete. Those things were and dude, that's what I kept chasing. Like super abnormal behavior right from the get. It was only in retrospect looking back to observe just how insane it was. But the very next day, I hit that same kid up asking, "Hey, we got to get more of those." And he said, "Oh man, I can't. I took them from my mom's medicine cabinet, but she'll know." I was like, "Okay." So I arranged to go over to the kid's house. When he goes to the bathroom, I go get in the medicine cabinet myself. Like that was day one.
Wow.
Right off the bat. Scamming, stealing. Yeah, just taking him. I was like, all right, if he's gonna be a pussy, I'll take him myself.
Seems like you had just
And then
signed up for the class and you're trying to graduate already.
it pulled me in, man. It pulled me in. It's funny when I hear people in recovery rooms talk about like, they try to pretend like they hated opiates. I mean, listen, I loved it. That was the problem. Like, and I'm afraid I still love them, which is why I have a very healthy fear of ever getting back to that place where I think it would be a good idea to take any. So, um, that continued, and it got gnarly pretty quick, although I could manage it fairly well. And so, um, but it pulled me in. It pulled me into the point where by the time I was graduating high school, before I even graduated, I was driving down from Salt Lake City to Tijuana, Mexico, just to give you a listen some parallel. Like it's a 14-hour drive. It's not like San Diego, right? I mean, and I'm going down there and I'm going to the pharmacies and I'm getting all the pharmaceutical narcotics and steroids and you name it,
Right.
and loading up my door panels, taking them off, loading them up, driving through the border, with my sombrero on, and I got away with it. The first time I was nervous, then I got cocky, then I thought I'm a man, and so I ended up doing it 4 times. And throughout that process, I joke that's when my entrepreneurship began. But I mean, I had a whole ledger of like, Sam owes me this or that, and I was selling to all the high school kids, and so I never ran out, and I had this supply, and somebody ended up getting caught down there because people caught on to what I was doing. So they started emulating it. They got caught. They got stuck in a Mexican prison. I remember that was it for me. I was like, I'm too pretty to go to prison. Not going down there again. Boom. No way. So I just kind of set this fast rule. I'm not going down there again. And, high school was coming to an end. And so was my, I had been doing them daily. Now I would take these trips for about 6 months. And I had heard people talk about withdrawals, but I never experienced them. And it was shortly after high school that they all ran out. And I was like, you know what? It's cool. It's time to grow up, move on, go to college, do whatever. And when those withdrawals hit, I knew exactly what people had warned me about. I for some reason thought I was going to be immune to them. I was sicker than I've ever been. The anxiety was a scale 10. I was I was so sick. And ended up over at a friend's house with an older brother who did heroin, and it was kind of like the wrong place, wrong time type of thing. And it was he offered me some, and that was a line in the sand I'd drawn. Yeah, I come from like a like a normal religious middle class family. It wasn't like I grew up around any of this. And I remember I said no at first, and about 2 minutes later, I said, "Will it make me feel better?" He said, "Immediately." So, as an 18-year-old kid, I shot up heroin for the first time, and that, it grabbed me. And by 19, I ended up in my first treatment center, and I went to that treatment center because my parents, made me, because they caught on that I was using heroin. I actually had to tell them. They knew I was doing something, but I told them, and they took me to this treatment center, and I mean, this place was nice. It was beautiful, and I remember thinking, this is just the worst ever. And I went in there thinking, I'm not even legal age to drink. I will get on board with the fact that I can't responsibly use heroin, but I am not giving up drinking or just partying in general. So that's the mindset I went in with. And so I got out. The first day I got out, we got drunk with my buddies to celebrate me graduating from rehab. And nothing bad happened. That was the crazy part. And I was like, oh, I can handle this. And it was only about a week later that I blacked out for the first time with alcohol. And I thought that was weird. That must have been a fluke. About a week later, when I was drunk, I decided to get some Coke. This story continues and like the insanity that I kept doing the same shit over and over and over and expecting a different result was literally insanity. And so I would, I kept doing that over and over and over. And I'd get some clean time and I'd go back out, and it was always this thought that somehow, some way I was going to do it different this time. Somehow, some way I was going to control and enjoy my using. And it just never happened. You see, I could get sober. I got sober plenty of times. It was 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. You know, a lot of it would come from help of rehab or jail, even sometimes just on my own, you know. But I could never stay sober. And so it was about that time that finally it hit me that drugs and alcohol weren't my problem. They were my solution. And that I was my problem. Because if they were simply the problem, taking them away would have done the trick. Right. And so that, I mean, my story with drugs and alcohol is not unique, I believe, in any way, shape, or form.
Right.
And it doesn't matter what my biggest problem, why I struggled to get sober was number one, I fully identify and admitting to myself that I was an alcoholic as well, that I couldn't safely put any mind altering substance in my body. That was number one. And number two is I look for the differences all the time. I'd play the compare game or like these guys, like they didn't have it as worse or they had it worse. Maybe I'm not that bad, or maybe I don't belong here because these guys all still had a job and a house when they got sober. What I know today to be true is it's not that differentiates us. It's the feelings that tie us together, right? It's the feelings we felt of hopeless, lost, all of this shit. So yeah, we're 2000. I'm just gonna fast forward here.
Yeah.
2000. I'm gonna sum this up. From 2005 was my first rehab until my sobriety to 2012. It was that story off and on.
Now, did you ever like have the plan of like getting sober so you could use again? And you were kind of like playing it out, you know, doing the experimental drinking type thing, or were you just, you know, like completely off the bandwagon of, you know, you got it this time?
No, yeah, I would go to these treatment centers and think, you know, how did I, you know, where did I go wrong? And every time you're like, and the heroin really fucks you up, dude. So, okay. I had these very, okay, you know what? And even alcohol, it generally drives you back to the coke, which drives you back to the heroin. Let's try just doing club drugs, ecstasy, GHB. These are like serious thoughts I'm having in rehab, not super normal, right? And during that time, I got caught up in the system, and started getting charges. And if you get caught up in the system, you're not ready to get clean, like it's gonna be pretty shitty.
Yeah.
Because I was constantly on probation and constantly violating this probation by not staying clean. Um, you know, and so I kept doing that game over and over and over. And in
Are you-
2009, what?
Oh, sorry to cut you off. I was when you're going through these rehabs, are you going into the rooms and doing the 12 steps, you know, like the 90 and 90? Are those all the things that you were doing? Or are you just doing, because I know some rehabs are completely different from other ones, you know, to whereas like where I went, we were required to contact somebody that was already in the program and go to one meeting a day, you know, and we would have to sign in, sign out every single day, that type of thing. And so, but I've also known some places to where you don't really leave the facility and you don't go out to meetings, and, you know, they're not required type thing.
You know, yeah, it was more of the first, you know, and there were some where I never left the facility, you know, but they brought or 12 step, any 12-step meeting into the facility. And, you know, it's like, you know, it's how I got sober was through the 12 steps. And I tell people, you know, that's the only way I've had that I know. And that's not saying that's the only way, but I would go to these meetings, but there was one lacking part that they told me to get a sponsor and work these things called the 12 steps. And for whatever reason, I was so resistant to that idea. I would go to the meetings. I'd go to 90 meetings in 90 days. I'd get a fucking coffee commitment. Like I would do all these things and then newcomer chicks and like, and I wouldn't ever fully buy in. I remember some guy being like, I'd keep coming back and then I'd relapse and come back again. And he just said, man, if you just actually did the work, these meetings would mean more. But I was unwilling to. And I think there was a part of me that still did not want to dive deep into this and actually get sober. The reality was, I look back, I wanted the consequences of using to stop, but I genuinely actually didn't want to stop using drugs. It's the only conclusion I come to why I didn't ever actually give the steps and a sponsor like a full try and run. And so I did all these other things. And when I look, what I do for a profession with coaching people, it's like they want to do like all this other shit, but like the main meat and potatoes, they're kind of like, I don't really want to like do all that. And then they're frustrated why they can't get the results they want. And that was my life, man. And so, but I'm so grateful that every time I went to another $15,000 rehab that my parents would pay for, that I basically found out the same thing, that like, okay, now that you're done, AA is still free, so fucking go to it. And I was like, is there another thing? Because this, I don't really want to do it. But I'm so grateful because the seeds were planted in those meetings. And what happened is I'd go to rehab, went to 6 or 7 rehabs. I've lost count. I had 17 bookings into the county jail. And that's back when they used to take you on everything. I mean, this is even pre-COVID. Our jails got so full that unless it was a felony, they weren't even arresting you. But back then, they'd arrest me on everything. They'd take me in, and I do some time. And over the course of from when I first started going to jail in 2006 till I got sober in 2012, in those 6 years, I think I did about 20 months locked up. I'd do 4 here, or 2 there, or 2 here. And then my longest stretch was I did a year, which I got 8 months for good behavior. So I go into jail all of 2011, basically the better part of 2011. And I get out on January of 2012. Birthday, my actual birthday, my belly button birthday,
Right.
not my sobriety birthday, is January 31st. And I got out of jail January 27th. My parents were so fucking stoked that I was going to hopefully, because I went to jail. I did the rehab program in there, and I genuinely believed that I was going to stay sober. I was confusing clean time for sobriety, like recovery. Because I was clean in there, and sure, I was in the rehab program, but at night I was also, I was getting in fights, we were scamming people, I was selling like other people's prescription meds, like I was just doing the same damn behaviors.
Yeah.
I got out, but I genuinely was like, Mom, this is my time, I'm done. They were so stoked for me to show up to my birthday. It had been 5 years since I had actually showed up to a birthday or showed up sober. Every year I was loaded or didn't show up. So they're so excited to have this party, get out, and the phenomenon of craving came back. If it was just about the drugs and alcohol, 8 months completely clean from all of it would have done the trick. But that's what differentiates somebody who has a drug problem and who's a drug addict in my mind, right? And I got out, and that craving came back, and it was so intense. And I thought, okay, I'll call the dealer. There's no way these crackheads keep the same number. This son of a bitch had the same number. He picked up, and of course he missed me, right? And he wants me to come down and meet him. And the whole way I'm driving down there, I'm crying. I'm looking, because I knew I did exactly what they taught me in recovery. I played the tape through. You see, my trend was I would go on binges. So I would use really gnarly for anywhere from 3 to 6 months. Then something would step in and save me, generally my parents. But my parents stopped kind of enabling me when they went to this rehab. I went to this rehab in 2009, and they got introduced to a program called Al-Anon, which really fucked up my using because they stopped enabling my behavior. But something would step in, something, detox, jail, the cops were with great intention. And I got out this time, and I'd completed probation. I wasn't on probation for the first time in 6 years. That's why they gave me the year and said, we're just done with you, dude. We're done taking you back to jail for 3 months or 2 months. So I did the time. I got off probation. I had nothing hanging over my head. And as I'm driving down, I played the tape through. That's what they tell you to do. And you play the tape through. I did. I was like, you're going to pick up, you're going to use. And if you don't overdose, because it's been so long, and you actually live, you're not going to stop till something stops you, and you have nothing hanging over your head. Your parents are going to be done with you, and you don't have any probation, no cops to save you, which sounds like such a bizarre thing, but and I did it anyway. And it was at that moment that I realized just how fucked I am. Like, I need to find something better. And that year went. And so needless to say, I did not show up to my birthday. My parents did what they said they were going to do, which was they cut me off completely. They told me, tell I'm sober, I cannot come around. And that year went, and I didn't draw a sober breath from that day, January 27th, until my sobriety date of November 20th of that year. And I went through all the seasons, and I was homeless. And I never slept on the streets because I was extremely resourceful. I wouldn't stoop that low, is what I would tell myself, right? But I was staying at the shittiest motels or crack houses that I never ever even thought should be livable. Trailer parks, you name it. I was a full-blown junkie, and I'd succumbed that was what my life was going to be. You see, I got certified as a personal trainer when I was still in high school. And I was actually the youngest person to ever get a job at this gym called Valley Total Fitness. Now has gone out of business. But that was the youngest personal trainer they ever hired. I got certified when I was still in high school. And right when I graduated, that's where I went. So and then I had some other moments in a Gold's Gym, managing the personal training department. Like there was some early success, and then I would always fuck it up. And so, but fitness was the one thing that kind of kept me coming back to recovery, because I would lose all my results. And there was a good time there where I still worked out. When you don't have a house, like you don't really have anywhere to kind of like go change up for the gym. I let everything go out the window. I lost 40 pounds. By the time I got arrested, I was unrecognizable. My diet consisted of a jumbo twist donut from 7-Eleven and a Slurpee. And I would go there when they were about to throw the donuts out, so this guy would hook me up with a free one. Like I was a homeless junkie, and I did whatever I had to do to stay sober. And that year, it got worse and worse and worse. And I decided it would be a great idea to add some meth in. This is a serious conversation I have with myself. Like, you're a little too doped out to go hustle to get money for your next fix. I think if you add a little meth in, it will keep you up, and it's cheap, and this will be I was seriously planning, like, this is how I'm going to like to have more energy. It's not how it went. I got really strung out on meth in addition, and I ended up with some of the shittiest people, some of the darkest people, I'm
man.
sure they were people, but they had lost their soul, man. It's a very dark, evil drug.
Yeah.
And,
I understand your ideology behind that of needing the energy and wanting the energy, but I know quite a people who that was their drug of choice, and hearing some of the stories that just goes on in that whole world, it's like watching a Joker movie play out in real life. Almost, it seems like that is a very dark hole to go down. Not to say that any other drug isn't, but to kind of add that one in on top of heroin, I understand the idea behind it, but
it's insanity. Like because I didn't know, I dabbled a little here and there, but it was nothing I ever bought or had on me. And it opened up, really Pandora's box in a way. It left me, in some psychosis state, because the delusion that somehow I was going to just use a little bit of meth so I could stay up to get more heroin or opiates or whatever was insanity, because I didn't know how to do any drug in moderation. That's why I couldn't safely use drugs. And so I ended up getting really tweaked out on that. And, I'm kind of grateful in a weird way. It brought me to my knees, because I started losing my mind like 3 days. I mean, if people understood, if you stay up for 2 days straight with no drugs, you're out of your mind. Like, you're not making sense. Like, you're not forming sentences. Like, if somebody just stayed up for 2 days straight, you get delirious. So add a very, very, very strong drug like meth on top of that. And that's how the psychosis comes. I mean, no sleep, just frying your brain with these toxic chemicals. And I saw some heinous out there that year. I saw some darkness, and I saw, people getting, like people getting kidnapped over a $30 drug debt and tortured in front of me. Like, there was some heinous shit that I had to work through in therapy. People that I was hanging out with got murdered, and I knew who murdered him. Like, it was all the shit that I'm like, how is this happening to me? And something happened towards the end of that year. It started to get dark again and cold, and it's a lot easier to run the streets when it's summer. And after those two people were killed that I was hanging out with, and I knew who murdered them. I didn't want any part of this. I didn't want to get in the middle of it. I didn't want to say I knew. I remember I said a prayer for the first time, and it was like, hey, if there is a God, or if you even give a shit about me, like, just please put something in my way to get sober. Like, this is like, it's Groundhog's Day every day. It's just getting worse and worse. And finally something did step in. And so I've told this story a bunch, but it's the only story I got. So my grandfather died in November. It was probably November 14th. I don't remember. And my mother called me. I hadn't spoke with her in months, and she said, your grandfather passed away. And she said, I really think you should show up to the funeral if you can. I said, I would really like to. And she said, please just do whatever you got to do to be okay.
Right.
And I knew what that meant was, don't be too dope sick and don't be too high. And I was like, oh, if I could only find that perfect mix, that would be
Been looking for a while.
Yeah. I'm like, and so of course I ran out that morning. Right. And so I knew I was going to withdraw, but I thought it was important. I just enough in there that said, like, you need to show up for your grandpa. And I thought, okay, I can just fight these off till I get back. This is going to be gnarly, but I can just act better than I feel. I've withdrawn plenty of times, just for that short amount of time. And I couldn't. It got really violent pretty quick. I was throwing up all over myself and sweating and in my mom's car. And she said, what do we got to do? She's crying. I just said, you got to go to the dealers. So I'll make my little religious mother drive to the dealers, make her give me $20 when we get there, and then hop back in her car. And we were already going to be so late to the funeral. We had to drive all the way up the highway by an hour and a half. So she said, just do whatever you got to do. She knew I used drugs. She knew I was a heroin addict. She'd never watched me. Nor do I think any mother should ever have to watch their kid do that. And I hopped in the back seat of her car and, got my whole kit out, with the spoon and the lighter and the needle. And at this point I didn't have any good veins. So it was like a full-time job to shoot up, and blood's everywhere. And I'm finding this vein. I shoot it up, and I'm looking in the rear view. I look up at the rear view mirror, and she's just staring back at me, driving, but staring at me, just tears just flowing down her face. She's not even wiping them off. They're just, I'll never forget that image. And for that, I'm grateful. But she's just bawling. And she doesn't say a word the whole time up there. And I remember it was in that moment, I call it getting well. Felt normal, quote, and I wasn't sick anymore. And normally that could numb the pain a little, but I remember thinking, dude, you got two options. You can't keep doing this to your family. You either need to kill yourself or you need to get sober. And the first option sounded a lot more appealing. And I had actually never been to that place where it was serious, like, I need to kill myself. And I didn't know what I was going to do, but I wasn't going to go on another day living like that. And that night, I ended up in a stolen car. To this day, I don't know. I did not know it was stolen. And for me, that's important to know, because whatever you believe in, there was a God doing for me what I couldn't do for myself in that moment. I hopped in this guy's car. I don't even remember his name, some drug friend. And, and he said, hey, will you drive? And I'd never seen this car before. And he wanted me to drive because it was stolen. And so we get pulled over pretty shortly after. And I go to jail. And I've never been so grateful to see those lights behind me, the red and blue lights lit up. And I remember just thinking, oh, this is it. And so cop came up and said, this car's stolen. I said, that's amazing. I didn't know that. And he was like, right. I'm like, I really didn't, but let's just go to jail. Let's get this over with. So the guy took me to jail, and the journey began. He said, I've never seen someone so excited to go to jail as he was taking me. And I said, dude, because I'm done. And he was like, yeah, I've heard that a lot from the back of a cop car. And I said, oh, trust me, I've said it a lot from the back of a cop car. But there was something that felt different that time. And they call it a gift of desperation. There was something there. And went to jail and I only did 30 days because the charges were dropped. And when I got out, it was December 20th. And called my mother and she said, "You cannot stay here." She said, "But I'll take you to a meeting." So she dropped me off at a meeting, and that's where my journey began. And haven't looked back since. And I'm super grateful for that, because the withdrawals I went through in jail were hellacious. It was unlike anything I experienced before. I mean, to the point where I said words like, "I'm going to kill myself if you don't get me something." And so they put me up in the crazy unit with just one little pad and the suicide watch unit all by myself. And where I just laid in my own vomit. And it was just this thing kept playing in my head that this is the last time you have to do this if you want it to be. This is the last time. This is the last time. When I look back and I think my grandpa spirit or something carried me through, because I got through those withdrawals. And when I got out, I did something different. And it didn't make sense to me that I was like, yeah, drop me off at a meeting. And when that meeting ended, guess who was the lone fucking guy? Me and the guy who ran the meeting. He's locking up and he said, "Do you need a ride?" And I said, "I sure do." And he said, "Where do you live?" And I said, "I don't have a house." I'll never forget that guy's face. He goes, "Oh, shit." He said, "I'll let you stay with me, but I promise you, if you steal from me, I will break all of my principles of recovery and I will fuck you up." I said, "Fair enough." So this guy let me stay on his couch and he told me the next day, he said, "You got to go find a job." I said, "Where, man? I don't have an ID. I'm a convicted felon." He goes, there's a restaurant hiring down the street." So I walked my little ass there. I got a job waiting tables, and it was humbling. And soon after that, I got a chance to get back into the fitness industry. About 4 months into sobriety, I got an opportunity that presented, and the guy hired me, even knowing my past. And man, I've never looked back since. Like, it's been the greatest gift. And I never want to forget any day just how fucking special it is that, like, I get to wake up and, like, I have a life beyond my wildest dreams. And yet some days I like to still bitch more than I like to express gratitude. And you hang around recovery long enough, all your dreams will become your problems. And it's what we call luxury problems. Like, the shit I got to deal with today is a lot, but it is luxury problems compared to what we used to deal with. So
Oh yeah, yeah. I've talked to people about all these first world problems that we have right now. Like, I'm getting a master's in dietetics, and that in itself is the largest first world problem I think I have. First of all, being sober enough to actually go to class, pay attention, and pass these tests. But on top of that, I'm getting a degree in food when most of the world doesn't have access to the food that I'm prescribing to clients to eat. Or worry about like nutrition and don't eat too much, but you still got to get your calories in, as like there's people that haven't eaten for days. So there's definitely those problems. I know I've talked to quite a few people that have been like in and out of the rooms, NAAA, some Buddhist styled meetings and things like that. Did you kind of stick with one, or did you bounce around, and do you still frequent those meetings? Because I think it was what today is. Yeah. I think it was like this weekend. You put something up on Instagram about, like ask a question or something like that. And I actually asked you a question that you answered about going into the rooms and whether or not like they've hindered your recovery or held you back. I believe is how I kind of worded it. Just because from my experience.
oh,
Yeah. And then you were like, well, maybe you should change your meetings, and like I just looked at it and I was like, yeah, you're not wrong. And it's kind of hard to like argue that. So yeah, you're definitely not wrong. But yeah, is that something that you're still frequenting? And
yeah, and to expand on that, it only gives you like story boxes on Instagram. But I mean, the most basic answer was no. I think it's helped, soar my progress. The long answer to that is there's definitely been times where, so I found myself in a fellowship called CA when I first got sober, which is Cocaine Anonymous, which was great. But let me tell you, those fuckers like party. Like, they're like, I mean, if I didn't make coffee for them, gonna be like, was gonna, off. killed after the meeting. It was, and we were doing all these crazy activities, and it was a lot of fun. But there was definitely, I mean, it's like you get a bunch of newly, sober addicts together, um, guys, and mix them with a bunch of girls, and like stupid shit happens. Like there was definitely times where, I mean, long story short, I just ended up having to kind of rebrand and switch fellowships to AA, and that's this neither here nor there really, other than what I found was they were holding back my progress. It's like I would go with kind of these same immature dickheads to these meetings that like, and I wasn't getting my spiritual fix, because that's, I go to meetings, nowadays to give back to the newcomer, because there was guys with time when I showed up. But also I go to get my own spiritual cup fed. Like, I don't need to hear 10 million more stories. And so there was times where certain meetings I would go to were holding me back. Like there were certain narratives that would go around meetings that still to this day bother me. This is kind of the first time I've shared, but I hate that, like this kind of like, that we're always just sick. You're just a sick alcoholic or a sick addict. And it's like, yeah, my head can be kind of a sick place to live sometimes. But I'll tell you what, almost 9 years later, I don't walk around just feeling like I'm a sick puppy, like sick mentally is like this twist. And like there's these certain words that go around meetings. I'm like, yeah, maybe when I was 6 months sober, I was a little psycho and sick in the head. But today I actually think pretty rationally, like, which is crazy to me. And I do have these occasional thoughts, but yes, I think and what I noticed is there were certain meetings I was going to that were holding me back. And so I had to kind of, experiment and try some different ones. And ultimately, Rob, what I ended up doing was I started a men's meeting at my office, that I still hold. That was 4 years ago, because I was like, I know what I want out of a meeting. And I think other people do too. Like, and so so I started a men's recovery meeting. And I'm still active in meetings. I go to 2 a week. And sometimes 3, but I've had to been very selective. There's times where there's certain meetings I was going to just because it was convenient, but it actually really wasn't helping my progress in life as an entrepreneur, as a dad, as a sober man. It just wasn't. And so the answer to your question is, it, there have been times where it's helped hold me back, but that's why I think it's so important to continue to find different meetings. And even if you're not in recovery, like find different outlets of people that as you change and grow, who I surrounded myself with. Like my 5 best friends early on, my first few years of sobriety, only one of them I'm still super close with today, because as I changed, they didn't. And that's okay. But like I need people who now I gravitate towards people with time that do it with their life, that have their own businesses, that have been through divorce like I just went through, and like get to pick brain on that. And so yeah, I mean, I think with anything, whether it's church meetings, if you allow some of the dogma to pull you down, like it can hinder some progress. And so I did change up my meetings, and I did start my own, kind of to find a fellowship of guys that are doing shit with their lives. That was important to me.
Yeah. I think there's something big to be said. I think it was a quote from Will Smith, or, something that he put up a few years ago about like, you're as good as the people that you surround yourself with. So if you look around and you got like, 3 millionaires, you're going to be the 4th. If, you're hanging around people that are stealing cars and breaking into houses, you're going to be, in that same car going to do the robberies type thing. So, excuse me, the stupid cold. Yeah, I completely understand having to actually start your own meeting. I've thought about doing it, but I've also gotten cocky and feeling like I've gotten everything figured out. And like the few meetings that I was going to just didn't suit me anymore. So I figured at this point, like I don't really need them anymore, since I've been still continuing to be sober after I've left them. But it's also made me realize that there's a lot of things that I learned while going to the meetings, and doing the step work and actually putting pen to paper that didn't make sense until now, until I actually needed them with like this recent cancer scare and, Like now it almost seems like I have these tools that I didn't even realize that I had. So kind of using all of your past experience, like through using and basically life, and then through recovery, how is a lot of that helping you kind of, I guess, navigate the seas of like business now and having to, like have conversations to where you can't be the guy you used to be. And you did go through a change in not only like what you do, but, who you are, who you surround yourself with, everything kind of has to change. And then also, how do you go into that being a new father? I know that's more of a question for me because I know my fiance's wanted to have a kid here coming up in like too soon, maybe like a year or two. And that scares the living shit out of me. Like I don't know what to do if I walk into my kid's room and he's like smoking a joint, whether or not I want to yell at him for how shitty he rolled it or for doing it in the first place. You know what I mean? So it's like, how are you kind of navigating your past life with your present life?
Yeah, man. No, it's a great question. And it's what's interesting is I got into, running and owning my own business in 2017. February of 2017 is when I started Key Nutrition, broke off from the place I was an employee at. And I didn't know jack shit about business. I'll tell you what, here's what I knew about business. I followed Gary Vaynerchuk, and I
Oh yeah.
watched Shark Tank. That was it. That's not a fucking business plan, just for the record. And I just went for it, man. It's, that old part of me that was like, I'll figure it out. Like I figured out, like I just went. And I got pretty frustrated, because I didn't know what I was doing. But I pulled off the experience of like somehow like I got sober. Like, and even going back to like, I was hustling and grinding out there. I'm like, I just got to put the same kind of hustle and grind, but not illegally, into starting this business. And I'm gonna fail a lot, but it's gonna be okay. So I really, pulled off of that. But what's been interesting is as something I've noticed, and it was probably a couple years ago, was um as I've tried to, because more importantly than how many fucking meetings you hit a week is really important to note. It's are you living, the principles that we learn in recovery, honesty, open-mindedness, willingness, service, basically taking your own inventory, not judging a bunch of other people. Am I living those on a daily basis? I got a buddy who hasn't been to meetings in a few years. That dude is one of the more spiritually fit dudes I know. He embodies the living the 12 steps, and it works for him. For me, I need to go back to be kind of reminded, because I kind of broke away from meetings and almost relapsed not too long ago. In Mexico, I was in a pharmacy and it seemed like a great idea to buy some narcotics. And it was this whole kind of wrestle with this girl I'm dating. And she was like, "What are you doing?" It was this and by the grace of God, I didn't. I ended up giving them to her, but it was this whole power struggle. And I noticed that, I do a little better when I'm plugged in. And so but what's been really interesting is as I tried to live these principles so much that I actually became a little bit of a doormat in business, and my coaches started taking advantage of me. And I was trying to be too nice, but what I was being was not speaking my truth. And so then it kind of flipped to, all of a sudden I started operating on ego, because all of a sudden I was like, I've had it. And so then I'm yelling at these guys, and I can't go back to that place too much, but I also don't want to be a pushover. So it's trying to navigate like how to not be, because out there in the streets, they called me pretty boy. That's not like a tough street name, right? I wanted a new one, like fucking loco or crazy, or like they called me. I always like tried to like do my hair, even if I was homeless. And so it wasn't because I was so tough, because by that point I had lost all my muscle. I was not intimidating, but I would step up for myself. Like I would be like, no, like, and I would get in some fights, but I knew I had to be on that guy. And when I see that guy coming out again, I have to like temper it, but also not be a pushover. And so I don't even know if I'm answering your question correctly, but it's been this shift where I realized like there's this place where I can operate from standing on my own 2 feet and living my truth, but not being a fucking dickhead, because when I'm speaking my truth, simply out of the fact that I don't want to cause confrontation, air quotes added, I end up resentful. When I'm resentful, it doesn't usually go well.
Yeah. All right, and
So
I got one more question for you, then I'll go ahead and get you out of here. Myself included, I'm kind of in this group of people that I want to contextualize. Um, I've been currently hanging out with like a bunch of people that are starting their own businesses. One of them is basically, following your path. Myself with like working with fighters, and I got a buddy who's doing a massage therapy thing, and so we all kind of have our own individual thing. I'm the only drug addict, but I'm the one that seems to have like the most confidence, even though they don't realize that it's fake as shit. Because I have the largest like version of imposter syndrome. I feel like, is can be known, and that seems to be like a common thread throughout the addicts that I know is that imposter syndrome. Is that something you've ever kind of struggled with, of you know going from that straight to like confidence, or did you just always have the confidence of you could do it?
no,
And
man. And I heard something in there too that's really important to note, that something I don't talk about enough that I just heard you share, that's been really vital to my sobriety, probably the last 5, 6 years, especially, is I have friends that are in recovery and we're cool, we're tight. And then I have a large group of friends who are not. Like, it is important for me to have, I don't want to sit there and like, I want to hang out with people that also aren't drug addicts and alcoholics. Like, um, it's been really crucial for me that I diversify my friendship group and who I hang out with quite a bit. Um, but yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I would say I felt imposter syndrome the majority of, probably the good part of, probably, and I still deal with it, but it's so much better up until probably the last 2 years. So the first 7 years of my sobriety, as I got more success in material things, I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. And I was thinking, if they only fucking knew who I really am, like, I can't
100%.
make money like this. Like, they let me buy a house. Like, this is like mind blowing to me. Like, I was, and I felt like I didn't deserve the success. And it was a huge issue I was dealing with, that like I joined this rather intense business group that kind of took, kind of broke down some of those walls, because I knew that it was going to hold me back. But I would say, I dealt with it a lot, and I think we all still do. But I got to a place of living my truth and realizing that like I am worthy of all this. Like, I do deserve this. And that, that whole fake it till you make it, they say in recovery, actually really kind of backfired on me, because I was kind of faking who I was, thinking I'll just make it one day. But it took a lot of work for me to start to believe that I deserved it. And once I believed I deserved it, I could be that person. And also, I've been really good the last year. I learned a lot from that group. Was not about just staying in my lane, not trying to pretend like I know something more about this or that. Or, example, I was on this group call for this guy who does like a mentorship group, and asked me to come do a Q&A with his people. And so I did. And this lady asked me about postmenopausal hormones. The old Brad would have made some shit up that wasn't even correct, because I had to like pretend like I knew more than I did. Because I just said, you know what? Here's what I do know, blank, blank, blank. But honestly, not my area of expertise. I have resources for you of people who are way smarter on this than me. And when I can do that and I stay in my lane, the imposter syndrome doesn't kick up as much, because I don't have to pretend to be someone I'm not. And what I learned is too, is no matter how long I've been in this industry, how many clients I've seen, nobody expects me to know everything. So if I don't know something, I said, just not my area of expertise, not my lane. They're all like, oh, okay, cool. Do you have anybody that is, or referrals, recommendations? And that was a beautiful kind of shift in where I'm at today in my life, was realizing that I don't have to be anybody. I get to stay in my own fucking lane and do what I do really, really good. And so, but yeah, I still feel like that sometimes, the imposter syndrome, and trying to navigate that. But it's usually when I'm not living in truth with myself. It's usually when I'm trying to act like somebody I'm not. So of course I feel like an imposter.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No,
Hopefully that
that
helps.
yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. It's actually, you said, what you said about that's not my area of expertise. I'm gonna have to start using that, because I hate saying no. It's a word I'm not comfortable saying in almost any context for some odd reason. But if somebody's asking if I know something, and even if it's, you know, something I should have absolutely no idea about, it hurts to say no, because I want to be the smartest in the room, the toughest, everything. But then that'd be a boring ass room, and pretty fucking ugly. So it's not a room I really want to be
You're
in.
gonna get a master's in, and you're gonna have a master's degree in. You're gonna be a
That,
master dietitian, right?
yeah, yeah,
So
yep.
the problem with that, along that comes with that, is now people are like, "Well, Rob should fucking know everything." There are some people who might think that,
Oh
but
yeah.
you let them know, like, "Oh, dude, like I'm a dietitian, not a surgeon." Like there are certain questions people have asked me along the way, and I'm like, "In what God green earth do you think I should know that?"
Yeah.
Like I've got a bunch of nutrition certifications, and um, you know, it's not my my area of expertise when it comes to certain things, or and that's okay. Like I've learned to just be really good at the things I am good at, and the rest of the stuff, build enough connections and with people who know a little more than me that I can refer them to.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I'm
No.
pumped for you. Congratulations on that. It's a big deal from like, to get a for anybody like me and you to get a master's degree in anything is amazing. And there's a lot to be said about that. I wish I would have gotten a little more further education instead of like just having to, wing it for years and then get certifications. And so that's exciting, man. Congrats.
Yeah. No. No. Thank you. But unfortunately, there's no. What do we say in the rooms? There's no fronts. I still got to earn that shit. I'm close, but I still got some time to go on it. So, but I do appreciate that.
Yeah.
All right, man. I know you're a busy dude. I got to get you out of here. If you'd like to take a couple minutes, just kind of let everybody know where they can reach you at, kind of get a hold of you and where they can kind of digest some of your content and let my viewers know.
Yeah. Yeah. So I hang out most active on Instagram at the Sober Bodybuilder, and give me a follow on there. Definitely where I'm the most active, where you'll find clips from Sheena. And our website for coaching is keynutrition.com. I myself have a waiting list right now, but I've got a couple assistant coaches that I work directly over and oversee all their programs that are available. And then the rest of my coaches are amazing too. And then I have a course called the Next Level Experience, which is actually just some of the key things I really liked about the 12 steps intermixed with my business partners, who one is one of the smartest guys I know with the neuroscience of the brain and all of how that works. And then his wife does energy work, which 2 years ago I would have thought was the most woo-woo fucking shit ever. But it has a place, and because we're all energetic beings. So it's a tight-knit community. It's a 9-week, very intense, interactive, and intimate experience that we take people through. And that is launching. I don't know when this will air, but the last one of 2020 launches starts October 27th, but that's just mynextlevelexperience.com. But more than anything, if you can follow me or hit up my podcast, the Key Nutrition Podcast, those two would mean the most to me. I don't need your money. I just want your attention. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it almost seems like the attention is more with money. Everything's going towards how many followers and what's your interaction rate like at this point. So,
Yeah.
but all right, man, I really appreciate you coming on. Thanks again. And everybody go check out Brad at Sober Bodybuilder. So thanks, man.
Thanks, man. Appreciate you.